I'll be putting this at the very beginning of the video because it's a long one. It's actually been like 2 weeks since I initially recorded everything, and I finally just got done putting together my secondary computer. And I just want to say that the rebuild of my main rig came out completely fine. The Sea of Thieves computer performs fantastically now. And like I said, I just got done rebuilding my secondary computer. It has an i5 12600KF and the same more or less 32 gigs of DDR Corsair RAM clocked at 6,000 mega transfers. But since the XMP, since the motherboard I'm using does not like the XMPs I have, I keep that stock. So the RAM is actually running at 4,800 mega transfers, which is completely fine for a secondary computer, especially considering it just has a 3090. And again, it performs perfectly fine. Yes, I may not be getting the full 6,000 mega transfers, but I have a nice stable system. And I'm overall happy with this computer rebuild. I finally upgraded my main rig to 12th gen, and I've also, of course, upgraded the Sea of Thieves computer from Ryzen 5 1600 to a i7 11700K. And of course, again, secondary computer completely rebuilt, working completely fine. And I haven't had any issues with the main. I haven't had any issues with the Sea of Thieves computer. I'm still stress testing this thing. I'm actually in the process of editing the video together. And well, so far this thing's been nice and stable. So with that said, I think I'll upload the video as is, and yeah. Well, time to completely tear apart 3 computers. My main, my secondary, and the Sea of Thieves computer. For a while, I've been wanting to upgrade to 11th gen for my main rig. The only reason I haven't done that yet is because I haven't found a case that'll fit within this very small footprint that I need. For the time being, I've been using this Encase M2 that fits that footprint completely fine. Though, like I said, it's using an 11th gen i7. So, it's been working completely fine. So, technically, I don't need to do this. But since I just got this case in, and it actually fits where I want it to fit, why not finally upgrade my main computer to 12th gen while also upgrading my Sea of Thieves computer from the little Ryzen 5 1600 to an i7 11700K, giving me a significant performance uplift in Sea of Thieves, while also giving me a slightly nicer looking computer and also slightly more upgraded specs than what I'm currently using. Again, as it currently stands, the main computer is perfectly fine, but since I have a 12th gen i7, I want to use it in my main rig and not my secondary rig. This is the case I got from John's Bow. It's actually really nice. For $100, it feels very, very premium. I'll pull it out of the box a little later on, but I want to kind of set everything up first to explain what I'm doing. So with that said, when it comes to my secondary computer, I am going to be pulling the processor out of this thing, and I'm also going to be pulling out the RAM. I will be eventually downgrading it to an i7K model of some sort, or not i7, an i5K model of some sort. And of course, I'll probably get the exact same amount of RAM. But processor-wise, this will be a downgrade, but again, it's my secondary computer, so it really doesn't need an i7. And of course, the Sea of Thieves computer is going to be completely upgraded. The only things I'm taking out of this computer case is going to be the power supply, storage, and the video card, which is currently an RTX 3080. And I'm going to put those components into this case right here while pulling out the storage, power supply, and the video card. And it was a little confusing, but and putting everything into the new case I got. So yeah, it's a little confusing. But first thing I want to do is I want to let the new Dawn demo here run for a little while longer, because I'm just seeing how hot everything gets. It's been running now for about an hour or so, but I want to let it run for a little while longer. Currently, the temps are well within check, but I want to see how hot this thing really gets. I want to see if the processor will actually get to 170, because the Corsair AIO I'm using, it should be kicking in significantly louder than what it is, but it seems to be able to maintain everything. But I want to let this new Dawn demo run for a little while longer, because all the heat getting pushed into the AIO is from the video card and whatnot, because due to the way everything's set up, heat is getting literally shot into the AIO. While with the new case, I'll actually have an exhaust fan in the back. But again, I'm going to let this new Dawn demo run for like another hour or so and come back. Well, there was a reason why I wanted to wait for a little while. The AIO fans finally kicked in. Maybe I didn't tune them right, I don't know, but now the fans for the AIO, like I said, are actually running. So the CPU temps are definitely starting to go down now. Maybe I don't have it set to the proper temperature probe in the Corsair crap, or I don't know, but it's finally working. Not to say the temps weren't fine as is, but I prefer the CPU to be in the 150s, especially when I'm running something as simple as a tech demo that's really only meant to stress the GPU. The only reason why the CPU is running so hot is because the GPU is literally ejecting all its hot air into the AIO itself. So with that said, I'm going to let it run for a little while longer and see if the AIO fans actually stay kicked on. Alright, a little bit of time has passed and the fans have quieted back down. Temps are kind of going back into the 160s, 170s again, so I possibly just don't have something tuned right. With that said, I'm going to now start the process of backing up all my data before I start ripping these computers apart. Though luckily with the secondary computer, I actually don't need to do any data backups because all I'm doing with this one is just swapping processors and RAM. Everything else stays, including the video card, which is a RTX 3090. I need to make a correction. It's an N-Case M1 Evo. With that said, one thing I forgot about this case is how much of a pain in the ass it is to work in. It's a nice case, but it is such a bitch to work in. So I finally got my GPU removed. Of course, it's my 4080. I already lost a screw for it, or for the case, so now I gotta figure out where the heck that ran off to. So the next thing I need to do now is pull this power supply and then plug everything into the case I have and see if the 12 volt high power, which is, where is that cable? This guy right here, and see if it's long enough or not. I kind of don't think it is, but I took it apart this much just to see if that'll be the case, because again, I am going to be doing the swap out and whatnot, and I'm also going to be reusing the AIO. That's because I actually have a few more of these Corsair fans I'm going to snag from another computer I have. That way, so I can have full Corsair RGB barf goodness. With that said, here is said 4080. It's in basically good condition because I generally maintain my systems. And there is my 4080. With that said, it looks like I might just have enough room for some two 120mm fans. And of course, I am going to put 120mm over here too. Main reason why is because I want to get as much fresh air into this GPU as possible. And also, well, fresh air in general from not just gaming on the thing. So when it comes to the cooling of the CPU, it's going to be, again, that Corsair AIO I'm going to be pulling out of the other computer. But first things first, I need to see if I can even jam 120mm fans underneath here. I think I can. I don't think I can jam a hard drive in here. Well, I can. It'll just have to be a 2.5. I can jam hard drives into this thing if I really, really wanted to. That's another reason why I got this thing, because I do like my 4 terabytes of flash storage, but I would also like to be able to have some mechanical backup drives. Like, I know for a fact I can jam 2.5 inch right here, so that's going to be 4 terabytes right there. And I theoretically should be able to jam like another one like right here, if not a few more, right in this nice little sweet spot. And I can load this thing up with a grand total of 6 mechanical drives if I really wanted to go that route. I may eventually do that, but for right now, I just need to make sure everything works before I even consider looking into hard drive purchasing and whatnot. Also, since I will be uploading this to my Sea of Thieves channel in Hole 2, the reason why I am uploading is because obviously I am rebuilding the Sea of Thieves computer, and this will become the Sea of Thieves computer, but I'll dedicate a part to this computer when I get my main situated, because right now this thing's just going to sit here. I still gotta find that one screw I'm missing. A little bit of time has passed. It looks like the 12 volt high power cable is actually just short enough or long enough to work. Now I'm gonna have to be putting it on top of the video card, so it's gonna look a little ugly. But I'd rather have that until I feel like I really want to get a proper 12-volt high power adapter from Cable Mod, or at the very least have this thing fully up and running for at least a month or so before I go for like custom cables. With that said, I am going to be forced to do a custom cable. One, because I can, and two, the 8-pin power right here for the CPU is literally like 2 inches short. It just barely makes it, but the plug is like right here and it puts a crazy amount of tension on it. And of course, it's also blocking out the 12-volt high power plug for the power supply. So I'm going to go around for some wiring, and I'm going to lengthen this up by maybe 5 inches or so, and that way so I can actually power everything up. Luckily, I have a bunch of old PSUs laying around that have the exact same gauge wire that this thing has. So all I need to do is just cut those to length, solder everything together, and I'll have myself a new lengthened cable. So I'll be able to actually power this thing up a little later today. So I'm going to get all that situated off camera, and I will come back. Oh, and another thing I forgot to mention is the fans I wanted to put at the bottom right here. The GPU is a little bit too thick. So that also means I'm going to be losing this PCI slot. So, what you going to do? At the very least, I can add multiple hard drives, which again is something I very much want. So like I said, I'll get the 8-pin or the CPU power figured out and come back. And if you're wondering how I'm going to do this, since this is just a flat ribbon cable and whatnot, basically, well, it's just flat like this, all I need to do is just basically cut and solder individually each individual wire. That way, so nothing gets all mixed up, because here it's a little weird, and of course on this side it's also a little weird. But of course in the middle right here, everything is one consistent line. So like I said, I'll come back when I get this thing situated. Obviously, if you don't feel comfortable, I don't know why you could be watching this video for a tutorial. This is just me rebuilding my computers, but if you don't feel comfortable doing this yourself, buy your own set of cables. When all else fails, go to the local automotive store, buy a 16 gauge wire. This is non-solid core, as in the stranded, I believe is what it's called. That way so I can properly solder everything together. It's maybe like a tad bit more thicker. It's definitely pretty heavy, but it's 16 gauge, just like the wire in here. So all I need to do now is just solder everything together, and I can now have this thing nice and extended. So I'm going to do all that off camera, and I'll come back when I get finished. It's not going to be pretty, but this ain't the first time I've had a modified power supply cable, and sure as heck won't be the last. Some time has passed, and I got the solder job done. It's not the best in the world, and I could have gotten some wire, whatever you call it, shrink wrap or whatever heck you call it. The reason why I didn't is because this was already, the wire alone was like $15, and the shrink wrap alone was $11, which just technically doesn't seem to be that much, but I'm trying to keep this thing cheap, and I was kind of a little strapped for cash. So duct tape will do a job just fine. So I will kind of try and make this not be such a wiring mess, and then I'll come back. All right, and the extension worked completely fine. If anything, it actually stops like right about here, and it gives just enough lead for this right here to wrap around without any issue, and still give me enough room for a 12-volt high power to make sure 12-volt high power doesn't have any weird flexing and whatnot. So the next step for me to do is to put this thing together proper and see if everything works. I don't see why this won't work, but with that said, I don't know for certain until I actually fire it up. So I'm going to get this thing put together off camera and come back. Alright, haven't fully closed it up yet, but I'm going to make sure everything works. Oh, we got instant power on, so that's good. As you also note, the AIO I was using has been removed. Simply put, it would not fit the way I wanted it. I had to have the power supply all the way down here, and that was actually interfering with the 4080 and whatnot. With that said, it looks like it's going to be booting up completely fine, possibly. I'm expecting at least one blue screen of death, because I am going from 11th gen to 12th gen. They're both gigabyte boards, but there's a completely different chipset. I'm missing the AIO and whatnot, so Hopefully Windows just boots completely fine, but that's what it looks like it's actually going to be doing. Alright, looks like it booted up completely fine. So the next thing to do is just make sure general stability is there. Mainly just GPU stability, i.e. 12 volt high power and whatnot. I know it's fully seated. Holy fuck, that is annoying. Do not have that enabled, so I'm going to actually use this. Whatever. Actually, I can actually... There we go. That problem solved. So, like I was trying to say before I got dinged half to death, I'm going to run like the New Dawn demo again on this thing and just see what happens. Alright, so with that said, I'm actually going to be going to bed relatively shortly, but I gotta move my other computers out of the way so my parents can still do their normal routines when it comes to going to bed, waking up, and actually being able to use the kitchen and whatnot. Because I basically took over the whole kitchen yet again. So far, though, everything's working completely fine. The temperatures on the CPU should be well under check because I'm using an AIO that I can more easily properly tune. And also I currently don't have the side panel on because, like I said, I want to make sure this thing works before I fully close it up. The last thing you want to do is fire up a computer and have issues and have to completely take it all apart again. So I'm going to let it run for a little while and we're just going to see what happens. Alright, spent like 15 minutes or so, maybe 20 minutes or so cleaning up the kitchen. And the computer's working completely fine still. I think it's safe to say, other than me needing to reinstall Windows on this thing, or at the very least DDU a bunch of crap off this thing, it seems to be working completely fine. And if anything, I might just be able to keep it as is and just keep going. I just gotta remove all the previous generation Intel crap and reinstall all the proper drivers for the current board. But again, I'll deal with that later. Tomorrow we'll be rebuilding the Sea of Thieves computer. Again, this one's going to be a little more interesting. With that said, if I could, I would very much get rid of the Corsair AIO. It's a nice cooler, but having to deal with that big ass, this freaking monstrosity is a pain in the ass. I'd rather go for something like that little $50 Thermalright AIO I saw on Amazon and just deal with that instead of having to deal with all the Corsair junk. Again, the AIO is not bad. It's just this box here is a pain in the bitch to work with. I mean, I did make a little bracket for it that actually latches to here and whatnot. I'll show you that a little later on when I go to rebuild this thing. But again, the AIO, for how nice it is a pain in the ass. Next to this case in general, for like I mentioned earlier, for being as nice as it is a pain in the ass to work in. I mean, once you get it done, it's a good case, but getting everything set up and getting everything cable managed, I'm not looking forward to it again. With that said, I'm off to bed and I'll deal with this when I'm more awake. The only thing I'm really concerned about is the little ribbon cable right here for the PCI and whatnot. Hopefully I didn't break it in the process. I don't think I did because I did take it out really delicately and whatnot. But these things unfortunately are fragile. But if I did manage to break it, hopefully I can contact the case manufacturer and get a replacement. Alright, it's morning the next day. I had issues with the installation of Windows and I'm hoping reinstalling it will resolve the issue. 1 gigabyte's crap wasn't installing properly. And 2, sound was mostly coming out the left side and not the right side instead of just being on both. I'm thinking again there's some weird issue, so I just completely nuked everything. And I'm just waiting for everything to install first before I plug the sound blaster or whatever the heck it's called back into the computer. So hopefully I resolved all the issues, but I'll come back if I still have issues or if I don't. Oh, I'm having even more issues, though it looks to be Microsoft related. Go figure. For some reason or the Microsoft store thinks I'm offline when I'm clearly not. So why not try Windows 11? Luckily, the version of Windows 11 that's on the thumb drive is a little older than the most up-to-date, so I can do the Shift F10 method to bypass the internet bullcrap, and I can set this thing up with an offline account like normal people. Alright, connected to the internet, and I now just gotta see if the store works properly. So obviously if you install Windows 11 and you don't have it connected to the internet, this is generally blank, but once you connect it to the internet, they tend to populate relatively fast. So with that said, I have not installed any drivers, have not installed any updates, just a fresh installation of Windows 11. I haven't even removed the thumb drive yet. So, okay, so far, everything's working. I'm still not going to install any updates. I'm going to go to library. I'm going to check for updates. Well, Windows is still going to install crap, but I'm not manually going to search for stuff. It will take a little while, but it looks like it is working, so I'll come back in a little bit. Alright, it found some stuff and it's currently downloading, installing, and so far, so good. I'll come back if it completes, and I'll come back if it fails. One of the two. Alright, a little more messing around, and everything seems to be working. The Microsoft Store is working. The Sound Blaster thing is also working. I got the tuning to actually stick, which is good. Turns out the reason why it sounded like there's more sound coming through this side than this side is due to the way audio and whatnot. And apparently if I'm like this close, it sounds like I'm getting more audio from this side than this side. But if I go a little more farther back, the audio more centers. Maybe I just gotta realign these two speakers a little bit more. But even if that's the case, I can just go into the settings for the Sound Blaster and actually tune it to where there's more audio coming from this side than this side to make it more centered. Or maybe my ears need to be unclogged. I don't know. But everything seems to be working. I also have XMPs enabled, so I'm running my RAM at 6,000 megahertz, or mega transfers, what the hell you call it. So before I fully finalize this thing and close it up, I'm going to run this thing for like 5 hours or so, just make sure everything is stable. And then I will come back, hopefully with a success, and then I'll fully finish everything up. I need to put 2 fans in the back here. Gotta get a fan right there. And of course, gotta connect them to the motherboard. So technically, I'm going to be pulling this thing apart a little bit when I'm done or done testing it. But once that is done, then I should be able to get this thing called fully finished. It's currently, what, noon? So I'll come back at 3 p.m. and we'll see what the see if anything's changed or not. When it comes to the way I had this thing set up is, I have it to where if I let it idle for 3 hours, the screen goes blank. And even though I do have a tech demo running, the screen still will go blank. So I'll be needing to nudge this thing every so often, so the thing stays on and I can monitor everything. So with that said, I'll come back again around 3 or so. Alright, with that computer doing its thing, I'm now going to work on the C3's computer. It's generally going to be fairly simple to get this one back up and running. It's just going to take a little while because, well, it's kind of in a mess. Here's the current C3's computer. What I'm going to be taking from this computer is the storage, the power supply, and obviously the video card. I'm going to be transplanting those into this, giving the C3's computer a significant uplift in performance. But I have to first deal with, like I mentioned earlier, the Corsair AIO, which is a pain in the ass to work with. I don't like working on it, but it has to be done, unfortunately. So I'll get all that situated off camera, and I will come back a little later on. Forgive the noise in the background. My AC unit is on. It's pretty hot in my room. Go figure. I'm running a i7 12700K and RTX 4080. The 4080 is the one putting out all the heat. With that said, it is now, what, 3:20 p.m. This has been running now for 3 hours straight, and no instability, no crashing, no blue screen, no nothing. It just works. So the next step for me to do is to work on or test the Sea of Thieves computer. It has finally been rebuilt. This case is still a pain in the ass to work on, but the specs are a i7 11700K, 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM clocked at 3600 megahertz, so I don't think I'll be able to hit that. And of course the RTX 3080. I'll eventually want to put in a 1 terabyte drive to actually store all my in-game recordings and whatnot. But for right now, the 500 gig main boot drive is more than adequate enough. And if I actually do run out of storage, I got a few backup drives that I can transfer those files over to. So with that said, I'm now going to get this guy set up, and I'm actually going to play Sea of Thieves on this thing. Alright, got everything set up to where I can just power it on and see if it works. I would not be surprised if it blue screen because I am going from AM4 to Intel, or AMD to Intel. I have done this before and it worked completely fine, but you just never know, it may actually start acting up. Now with that said, considering I was having issues with Microsoft Store on this computer, I'm going to leave this one alone. All I'm going to do is just uninstall all the AMD stuff. That way so I can have as fresh of an installation as possible and just reinstall all the Intel stuff for the motherboard and whatnot. But the real question is, are we going to blue screen or are we going to get directly to the desktop? I also did disconnect it from the internet, that way so I can make sure none of the Intel stuff installs as I go through the process of uninstalling all the AMD stuff. But it kind of looks like it's going to be going by without any issue. Windows definitely is not liking it, but it seems to be working. And this time around, it should actually get to the desktop. And just like that, I'm now at the desktop. So now I'm going to start the process of uninstalling all the AMD stuff and come back. Some time has passed. I got done playing Sea of Thieves for like maybe 2-3 hours. I had one driver crash. I don't know if I need to blame NVIDIA or if I need to blame Sea of Thieves. I'm going to blame Sea of Thieves on that driver crash because I was able to still screen record at the exact same time. So something about Sea of Thieves caused the driver to crash. But with that said, other than that, it was pretty much literally smooth sailing. Frame rate was consistent. Everything was running a little bit hot until I tuned everything. I have to lock my 3080 down to like 144, and that's because I had to replace the pads for like the VRMs and VRMs memory and whatnot. Because when I did do maintenance, I unfortunately ripped them because they were pretty freaking old. I have a set coming in. I just have to wait for the confirmation for them being shipped. If not, I'll contact the seller and go from there. But with that said, I'm now back working on my main. As much as I know they'll be dropping support for Windows 10 next year, I still want to use Windows 10 up until that point, and maybe just a little bit longer after that. I'll hold out for Windows 7 for the longest time, and I'll probably hold out for Windows 10 for the longest time. With that said, I got Windows 10 reinstalled. I have to restart the computer, but I was able to update the Microsoft Store without any issue. And if I want to go to here, sign in, I can also sign in completely fine. And just for the giggles, before I actually restart this computer, I want to see if I can actually download the Xbox app. Mainly for if this thing does act up, like I'm not able to get into the Microsoft Store, I want to at least have some type of evidence proving that the Microsoft Store was working prior to whenever it started fudging up on me again. Yeah, I'll turn you off in a bit. All right, so for posterity, the Microsoft Store is working now. Everything's working as it should. So I'm going to hit restart, and I'm going to finish all the updates off camera, and then I'll come back because I think I might know what the actual cause of the issue was. And I might as well also mention what am I doing for my secondary since I'm down a secondary computer. Well, I'm using my Dell Inspiron with a GT1050. It's more than enough for secondary use. obviously if I want to do more intensive tasks like gaming on my secondary, because I do game on it from time to time. I don't know why that is, but I don't know why I am like that, because I do have a really good main rig, but sometimes I want to play something on this. Why? I don't know. I'm weird. But for general web browsing and whatnot, it's going to be completely fine. And generally, for the most part, that is what my secondary is more or less doing. So it's kind of an overkill secondary, but it does the job. And actually, there is a reason why I have a fairly overkill secondary, and that's because if my main decides to shit itself, and I've had this happen before, to where my main computer shits itself, I'm down a computer. So if it does shit itself, I have a secondary computer that's as capable, not as well, more than capable enough to go to where I can start gaming and doing whatever I want on this, while I also figure out what the hell's going on with this, because sometimes the main's down for a week and I want to have something to utilize for the time being. Now, of course, I'm still working on the main, but again, for secondary use, I just want to be able to web browse, watch YouTube and whatnot. A little laptop here is more than enough. And as you can see or tell, I'm a very rambly person, unfortunate. But with that said, I'll come back later. Alright, the Gigabyte Control Center up because my motherboard is a Gigabyte board. So when it comes to what I think was causing the issue was this right here. Since this is network monitoring, that's what I'm thinking was fudging up the Microsoft Store. With that also said, obviously they tried to get Norton installed. I have no idea how Norton's still a thing in 2024, but apparently it is. But before I install all these updates, let's see if the Microsoft Store is still functional. It is, in fact, still fully functional. So with that said, let's start the process of installing all the necessary drivers so my computer can actually function to its fullest potential. Alright, some time has passed. I now have some fans for it. This is what $76 of fans look like. Now with that said, yes, I could have gone for something a little more cheaper, but this is my main computer. This has high-end components, and I want to make sure those high-end components are properly cooled. So I want to put a little more money into some more properly efficient fans, especially ones that are meant for static pressure for this case, especially considering the top right here is meshed. So I want to make sure the fans have the proper pitch and whatnot that can actually push all the hot air out the top right here. Obviously the fan in the back here is going to be completely fine. And I'm also going to be swapping out this fan for one of these so I can have the full rainbow barf experience. Though I'm going to be setting all these fans to white, but I do want to have that option for if I'm going to go full rainbow barf, I can go rainbow barf. So I'm going to get those fans installed off camera and get this thing finally put together, fully including hopefully the handle, and I'll come back. It's amazing how many times I try to build these things without doing any custom cutting or custom wiring or anything like that. I'm always doing custom wiring or cutting or whatever. First, lengthening the 8-pin on my C-Sonic, and then bodging together the RGB lights for my fans and whatnot, mainly for the case, because the pins are very fragile and I broke one accidentally. Luckily, I spliced them all together. I have everything set up now to where, again, white, and I also have a CPU fan lit up, so we're all good to go. So the next step for me to do is to clean all this up, put this whole thing together finally, and boot it up and finally show it off because it's finally finished. Alright, now the $64 question. Does everything still work? Alright, it seems to be booting up completely fine. I'm a little worried it might freak out a little bit because for the initial few boots I was doing to test the RGB, I had the video card unplugged because, well, I need to get to the ARGB headers on the bottom side of the board. But looks like we're back to the desktop. And now I'm going to just run the new Dawn demo yet again on this thing just to make sure the GPU is functioning properly. I made sure that the 12-volt high power is fully secured. I actually gotta make sure that everything still works. I don't see why I wouldn't, but This is a 4080 and those things still burn the connectors, unfortunately. And the one thing that sucks about this particular cable is that it is seated in fully, but there is a little bit of a gap right there on the little sense pins. I don't know why that is. The card runs completely fine, but that's one of the annoyances of this 12 volt high power cable is that even though it's properly seated on the actual main cables, the sense pin has a nice little gap, and unfortunately it's just due to the way it was designed. I don't get black fan full fan. I don't get black screen full fan at least, so there's that. But again, I gotta stress test this thing now. Alright, got back in slow home. I've had the new Dawn demo running for maybe about 30 minutes or so. So far so good. So the next test is to actually play a game on it. So I'm going to get Hogwarts up and running on this thing because that's one of the very few games I currently have on this thing, and one of the more games that are fairly demanding to run. The one thing I want to try and find is a first person mode for that game because I'd rather play in first person than in third person, but one thing at a time. Some time has passed. I decided to play War Thunder because, well, I want to play Pain Thunder. And everything's been working completely fine. Temps have been well under check. Obviously, GP's running a little harder than I would like, but I'm actually impressed it's actually running this time because normally it's around like 150. Yeah, with that said, at some point I may look into getting some slim Noctua fans for the bottom. But for right now, it's doing the job just fine, and it running at like what 160 is more than adequate. If it was running in like the 180s and whatnot, 170s, then I'd be a little concerned. But in the 160s, it's 10 degrees hotter than what I would like it to be at, but it's still perfectly fine. And of course, CPU temps are well under check. Everything seems to be properly tuned fan curve wise. I just gotta monitor this stupid cable for a little while before I finally feel safe, because every single time I touch that stupid thing, I'm afraid it's not in there correctly, even though I know for a fact it's in there correctly. That stupid 12 volt high power, I fucking hate it.